And I actually had like another follow-on question to this, which is in the same arena.
Who would win?
Yeah, who would win? Who would win in a fight between a UFC fighter and a SEAL team member? And I'll just go ahead and broaden that out to make it like, a special operations guy, because people put special operations personnel onto a pedestal of, totally being able to kick everyone's ass, which is... Well, to answer the question in its simplest form, if there was a fight and it's mixed martial arts competition, so like in a cage, what you were just talking about with a referee, and that's the way it's going to be, and there's 5-minute rounds, and there's 5-minute rounds, and we're going to see who's going to win this fight, barring a massive weight difference, and a rare special operations guy that has a high level of training. If you take a 175-pound special operations guy that just trained like a normal special operations guy, doesn't have any specialties, we're not talking Tim Kennedy, we're not talking any of these guys that actually are committed and getting into it and train outside the actual discipline of their job. If it's just a normal run-of-the-mill guy from the special operations community against a professional UFC fighter in the same weight class, it's the UFC fighter's going to win. Yep. Those are the facts. And again, that's in a cage. And I know this because, you know what? I've trained with a lot of really high-level UFC fighters. And, I mean, I've trained with Randy and Tito, and I've trained with Brandon Vera and with Quentin Rampage Jackson, and I've trained with Dan Henderson, and as a matter of fact, I've trained with Bisping too. So I've trained with a lot of these guys. None of them at like all the time. Although Brandon Vera and I used to train together all the time, and he's awesome. But I train with those guys. I train with those guys, and not to mention Dean Lister, I've been training with forever. So I've trained, and when I train with those guys, a majority of the time, I would train grappling specific. So we wouldn't be just doing straight MMA. So we're training in an arena that's geared towards me, somewhere that I'm actually good at, right? I've been training jiu-jitsu for 20 years. And so when I go in the cage with those guys, or when I've trained with those guys, I'm competitive with them, so, we have good training, right? It's not like, we have good training. It's good competitive training with all those guys. But I've been training this stuff for a long time. So my magical special operations powers, I know what they are, and they're not real. You have to learn how to fight to be able to hang with these guys. And if you don't know how to train, if I put, because when I train with a regular, a SEAL that doesn't train, of course, it's jiu-jitsu. You freaking destroy them. They have no chance. So if you take a guy that's just a normal guy that doesn't train, they're going to get their ass beat, just like any other. You do get no magical powers. Will you be tough? Sure. Will it? And this is good. Like, you take your average SEAL and you start teaching them jiu-jitsu, they're great training partners because they're strong. They have great endurance. They go freaking hard. Yeah, they don't quit. They don't give up. They'll keep training with you until they don't tap easy. So, yeah, they're great training partners. And the more you teach them, the better they're going to get. And they're going to learn quickly because they're going to be focused on it. So that's all good. But the fact of the matter is, you take a skilled, you take a skilled UFC fighter, and it doesn't matter that you were a quote unquote, Navy SEAL or special operations guy. That's just not going to happen. So now the other kind of thing on this is, if you take both people now out of the cage and you put them into a survival type situation, now the special operations person is going to have a much better chance, because first of all, they're going to try and avoid the bad situation if they can. And if they do have to fight, they are much more likely to use some kind of a improvised weapon, to do some kind of sneak attack, to have backup, right, in the form of other guys that you didn't realize were with him, and all of a sudden you're getting hit in the head with a bottle. It's the professional fighter, of course, has a huge advantage, but there is some, when you get out of the cage and there's no referee, there's some things that your average special operations guy is going to be thinking about that your normal person wouldn't be thinking about in these situations. So that's why I said, just in general, first of all, don't get any street fights. It's not smart. Doesn't get you anywhere. And you see guys that are in the military, just in general, they kind of have another little level that they might take things to, right? And that's you think you're getting a little fist fight, right? You think, oh, I'm in a bar, I'm just getting a little fist fight with this person. The next thing you know, someone's biting off your nose. Right? Or someone's ripping off your ear, or someone's sticking a fork in your eye. Because that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that you take one of these people who's trained and that has a little switch in their head that they go, oh, I'm in a combat scenario right now where this guy's attacking me, and I'm gonna chew off his nose, or I'm gonna rip off his ear, or I'm gonna gouge out his eyes. I'm gonna do it right now as fast as I can. So that's why, just you got to use caution. And I got actually one of my buddies back in the day.
Sure.
We were in a bar, and some guy was getting cocky and said something to a girl. And, he knew the girl and blah, blah, blah. And there was whatever situation. So my buddy's like, hey, can you go ahead and apologize to that girl? Because that wasn't cool.
He said it all nice.
Like just all nice.
Yeah.
And the guy's, what? And he says, yeah, hey, no problem. You said something to the girl over there. You see her? Yeah. With the red shirt on. Yeah. You said something to her and it was kind of offensive. So if you could just go, apologize to her, then, we're all good here. And he's, what do you mean we're all good? Yeah. No, I mean, if you can just apologize to her, then we're all good. And, the guy says something like, what are you going to do about, and as he's finishing those words, the guy was smoking a cigarette. As he's finishing those words, my buddy, in a millisecond, in a nanosecond, like faster than you can snap your fingers, he snatches the cigarette out of the guy's mouth and shoves it with absolute laser target precision up the guy's nose. A burning cigarette. So this dude and he put it in there deep. I don't even know how he did it. Yeah. Like a ninja move. Wha-bam! It's up there. The dude collapses. I mean, can you imagine? You've seen people like put a cigarette out on their arm or whatever, and it leaves a scar for the rest of their life. Yeah. He shoved the burning cigarette, up the guy's nose. The guy collapses to the ground and just like screaming and just completely defenseless. So that's the kind of thing. Maybe that guy was a tough guy. Maybe that guy was thinking, oh, I'm a boxer, or whatever this guy might have been. I don't even know, because the fight was over before it even started, because the guy had a burning cigarette jammed up in his nasal cavity. In a split second. Fight's over. So that's the kind of thing that, let's be friends with each other. Let's just try and treat each other with respect out there, so we're not getting into fights. Because I got a bunch of stories like that, and they don't end well. They don't end well. And
that's kind of like special operations guys. That's kind of, and I'm not that guy that you're talking about is not a special operations guy, right? That was just
the guy that did the cigarette up the nose. Oh no, he's a SEAL.
Oh
yeah, and this was years ago. Okay, many years ago. And he did it just like that. And that's the kind of thing. Like, again, the guy that he's talking to thinks he's a tough guy. Yeah. Thinks, oh, I'm a tough guy. What's this little, guy talking to me, talking smack, telling me to apologize? I don't have to apologize to anybody. And this was also pre-MMA days. But, maybe the guy's a boxer. Maybe the guy's a wrestler. He might be a tough guy. But I guess apparently when you get a burning cigarette shoved up your nose, you're not tough anymore. It just goes over like that.
Yeah. Even better then, as an example, is where, first off, if the guy, how you said he's saying it all calm, like, hey, just go ahead and apologize. Totally. That would have made me nervous right there. Like, oh, this guy's too. Anyway, but that's the side thing. So, so a special operations guy, compared to an MMA guy, he's about he's thinking beyond the fight. Mm-hmm. He's thinking straight up, this is a battle. So how can I win this fucking war? Mm-hmm. MMA fighter is thinking like, when we fight, how am I gonna beat you up with all my skills? And he will. Yep. Typically, he will. Yeah. Unless you have equal or better skills, you're gonna get beat up in a fight. Yeah. So, but the other guy, he's thinking tactical. He's thinking, okay, he'll probably, and according to the guys that I hang around with, when they walk in a room, just like a jiu-jitsu guy, when you want a person is presented to you, you're thinking jiu-jitsu already.
Yeah.
You're thinking, okay, from here a solid takedown would come.
A special
really
operations
good right
guy
here.
is thinking I can stick my pen in this guy's eye real quick.
There's the door, and let's say other guys just came in. Okay, so I got 5 guys. He has like 8 before any fight. No fight, no nothing. This is just the way, that kind of the mind works. And then and he's planning like your guy. He had that plan already.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like he was like, oh, I'm just going to attack. And that just kind of came about during the process of the attack. He knew like, okay, he has a cigarette. That's part of my plan, my tactic, So, yeah, when you go outside of just
amazing,
the fight.
Though, too. Like, you think about, the Rex Applegate, the whole idea of self-defense being gross motor movements instead of fine motor movements. So, if you ever look at some of the old school unarmed combat from the military, it's all based on this idea that when you get in a fight, you want to do these big gross motor skills. In other words, just giant movements with your fist and with your legs. So there's no really fine motor skills, because when your adrenaline's pumping and you're in this fight, you're going to make little mistakes. Imagine the fine motor skills it takes to grab a cigarette and shove it up someone's nose in a split second.
I know, yeah.
There's another story, and I don't know why Tim Kennedy and we talked about it before we came on the podcast, and we didn't get to it. Maybe we'll talk about it next time, because we reviewed the whole story, and it's a great story. As you know, he trained at the pit in San Luis Obispo for a while, and SEALs used to do training up there. And one night, and all the guys that trained with Tim at the time, they all used to work as bouncers, and these guys are pro. I want to say, I wish I could remember the names of the crew, but it's basically the old school San Luis Obispo pit crew, right? So it's, I want to say Gan McGee, Tim Kennedy, Chuck Liddell, that crew, right? Those guys, before, the UFC was big, those guys all worked as bouncers in San Luis Obispo. So some SEALs were doing some training up in the area. They went out in town, got into a fight, and the guys got their ass, the SEALs got their ass kicked.
Yeah.
Pretty much by... And it was, Tim and I were laughing about it, because, again, this is before the UFC was really popular, and they got into a fight. And, of course, not only is it a bunch of UFC or at least high-level MMA guys that are working as bouncers, so they're sober, fighting against a bunch of drunk team guys.
I know, man.
And it was funny because they said, man, because these SEALs got their asses kicked, and they're kind of like came back like, oh man, I don't know, these bouncers were tough. Yeah. And then I go, where was it? And they're like San Luis Obispo. And then somehow through the grapevine, through the MMA grapevine, somebody told me back, hey, Jocko, those guys it was these guys, it was guys from the pit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I know that story, by the way, because a guy, he was a new guy. I'm not gonna say his name. I think he's still in, so I'm gonna say his name, but he met him through the cake nuts. They come by and that's how I met JP, kind of the same way. Yep. But he would always come in the club that I worked at. And so we kind of became friends, So after we're done, we're eating at the same spot. Yep. And he's like, yeah, man, Chuck Liddell beat me up.
Yeah.
Not like we were, beat him down, but we got in a fight and Chuck Liddell beat me up. Yep. Hit him and knocked him down. And I actually,
that's what happened. So that was a classic example. And by the way, I'll say something about, while we're talking about Chuck Liddell, when Chuck's always been like awesome to vets, especially wounded vets. So Chuck Liddell, hey, if he's bouncing at a bar and you're a vet and you get out of line, you're gonna get put down. But if you're a warrior, that always impressed me about Chuck was he did some great stuff for the troops that have been wounded overseas, and that always gave me a lot of respect for him. Even more respect than I have for him as being a great fighter. But anyways, that kind of answers the question. And so my overall broad guidance here is train hard to do battle, but do your battles in the gym, not in the street. It's only going to get you either put in jail or put in the hospital or both. Yeah. So get some.
I remember this guy we trained with got his ear bit off. Remember? Igor. Was he a Navy SEAL or is he?
Yeah, he got out. Yes. And he got into a street fight.
Yeah, he knew jiu-jitsu.
And I mean, he kicked the guy's ass, right?
Yeah.
He actually, I think he Muay Thai clinched him, put him down on the ground, got cross-side.
Yeah.
Was kind of putting the beat down on this guy, and the dude just bit a big chunk of his ear. He bit a chunk of his ear out.
I know, man.
Bigger than the chunk that Bigger than the chunk that Mike Tyson did out. I mean, it was a big chunk. I mean, his ear is clearly has a bite taken out of it. Like if you took a big, nice, solid bite out of a piece of pizza, that's what his ear looks like.
I know, man.
And oh, cool, you won the fight.
Yeah.
But you have no ear left, so that's a bummer. And that's another thing. That's another point to that is that sometimes these self-defense type people think that, oh, well, I'll gouge your eyes out. Yeah. And that's the indication that I just kind of gave, too, that, hey, the Navy SEAL might do something tricky to you. Yeah. Well, the bottom line is that stuff is a lot of times doesn't work. And that's a perfect case. The guy bit his ear off and thinks, oh, the guy's going to give up. No, he's not giving up. That means he went even harder.
Yep.
Like, that means, oh, now you got a guy across the side that's about to ruin your shoulder for the rest of your life with a Kimura, then put you to sleep. And it's just a bad situation. So you can't, just another thing about those thinking that you don't need to train because you're going to do a ninja move or you're going to shove a cigarette up some guy's nose. No, wrong answer. Or you're going to bite their ear off or you're going to, no, it's not true. You need to train so that you can get in those positions and that you won't lose these fights. Yeah. And also you need to train so that you don't have to get in fights because most of the time when you're getting in fights because your ego is getting out of control and you can't handle it in your little brain. You get all insecure about who you are as a man, so you think I'm gonna kick this guy's ass, and then you're either getting your ass kicked, you're getting put in the hospital, or you're going to jail, or you got a big lawsuit against you. So be smart.
Yeah, that's rough. Hey, remember in Bloodsport when he was like, the coin, you watch Blood, remember Blood, the guy with the coin, and he's like, hey, whatever, if I can grab it before you close your hand, and the girl had something to do with it, and he's like, he grabs it, he closes the hand, he's like, I still feel the coin in my hand, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. He switched the coin. That's kind of what your friend did with a cigarette when he shoved it in the guy's sinus cavity, because it's like super fast, but precise.
But you can't count on that move. That's my point.
Yep.
All right, kicking it off.